Longhorn fans, Sooner Nation, welcome to episode 159 of the Bevo Podcast, the only podcast exclusively dedicated to covering the greatest rivalry in college football, the University of Oklahoma and the University of Texas. I'm here with my man, Kevin Miller. I am John Whitson. Kevin, before we delve into what is deservedly so a very Texas-intensive podcast, because, of course, they're in the college football playoff against Clemson, Saturday, 3 p.m., DKR. I just have to take a moment to say it is a great day to be a Sooner. John Mateer, the number one portal player in the country, commits to Oklahoma yesterday. Numerous rumors abound about Miami. Toby Rowland reporting that North Carolina and Bill Belichick made a late run at Mateer. Then it took Baker Mayfield to call him and close the deal. Regardless of how the sausage was made, we got the guy that we wanted. Now let's go see if it can happen. I'm really, really excited about this. And then, Kevin, the cherry on top of the Mateer cake occurred in Charlotte, North Carolina yesterday when the Oklahoma Sooners hung around with Michigan and their two 7-foot-tall white boys who were just beasts on the boards and beasts on the post. It didn't matter because we just kept coming at them in waves, only to hit with 11 seconds left, Jeremiah Fears, a.k.a. the killer baby, hits a three-point shot and is fouled to win the game by one. Jumpman Invitational to stay undefeated, likely enter the top 10. There's two games before conference play that should be wins. It is quite possible Oklahoma could be 13-0 entering the SEC. Here's the deal. I've been very clear about this. To ask me about Oklahoma basketball once conference play starts. Right? Because I've seen this story before. This is not new. This goes back to Long Creek. We talked about it yesterday with Trae Young. I've seen the excitement level for Oklahoma basketball be so high in December, only to be just the rug completely pulled out for me in February and March. However, when the shot hit the bottom of the bucket yesterday and he makes the free throw and we win, I think they sucked me in, Kevin. I think they sucked me in. I think Oklahoma has a good squad, dude.
Good. Hey, you should be excited. I mean, to be undefeated is to be undefeated. You play some decent teams. I know Arizona's not, it's not like they got Shane Battier, not Shane Battier, Miles Simon and Mike Bibby.
Sean Elliott, Steve Kerr.
Yeah. Richard Jefferson. But still, Channing Frye's a good team.
Luke Walton.
Yeah.
Luke Walton. Wasn't Luke Walton on that team?
He was.
I agree. But hey, we beat Louisville, beat Arizona, beat Michigan, beat Providence. I think we beat Providence. Either way, it doesn't matter. It's we keep winning. We'll see. If we get to 13 wins, I honestly think we need 7 more to make the tournament in the SEC. So we'll see. But anyway, that's Oklahoma. It's a great day to be a Sooner.
Well, let's talk about Mateer. Let's talk about Mateer real quick.
Did you see that the Heisman odds came out for next year and he's third?
I did not see that. Who's number 1 and 2?
Arch is number 1.
Arch
is number 1. Number 2, it was on Twitter. I just saw it. And maybe I lost it. So I might have to go back and look for it.
But still, to start off, big.
Garrett. Nussmeier. Nussmeier at 3. Nussmeier at 3. Drew Aller, Nico Iamaleava, and Cade Klubnik. All quarterbacks that we will be talking about later today on this episode. Guys that are playing in the college football playoff. He is third behind Arch and Garrett Nussmeier. Listen, dude, when you look at his stats, when you look at Mateer's stats, he's an athlete, dude. He's a big, strong kid, willing to run the ball.
What stands out is that 800 rushing yards. That's what really stands out.
We never got the run game working with Jackson Arnold, except against Alabama. And against Alabama, the run game looked pretty good. His looks, I mean, he just looks a little more dynamic, right? A little more confident. Now we'll see if that translates from Washington State to the SEC. But I think we're finding out that this transfer portal deal it's the real deal, right? It's
Well,
you go look
give
for
it then take it away. Yeah.
but you go look for instead of banking on potential, you're banking on past performance
Correct.
at a Division One level.
Yes, you're bringing in experienced players that you don't have to develop as much. I mean, look at Texas over the past couple of years. Matthew Golden has been incredible this year at receiver. Isaiah Bond, who's been injured, but he's been really good too. Last year, A.D. Mitchell.
Now, did y'all have a receiver that came? Did y'all have a receiver that came from FCS?
No. Our portal guys were Silas Bolden, who's at Oregon State, and then Matthew Golden from Houston, and then Isaiah Bond from Alabama.
Oklahoma signed 2 receivers, and I don't have their name. One of them's a Gibson, and then I don't know who the other guy is. But big guy out of Arkansas, Pine Bluff, I think is the Gibson kid. And then another guy. Somebody was making the point. Would you rather have a guy that had 20 catches at FBS or a guy that had 90 catches at FCS? Like why are we so excited about the kid that is obviously transferring from a big time school for a reason? And I think there's some merit to that, right? It doesn't have to be, oh, this guy left Alabama, so he has to be good. And I'm just picking on Alabama. I don't know if anybody's even left Alabama. But
plenty of people have left Alabama.
Well, and the other side of the coin, and I texted you this the other day, or I texted you this yesterday when those 2 receivers signed, you don't have to pay them. You got to keep in mind, we have a salary cap to manage. So it's like getting a receiver in the 4th round, right? If you want to make an analogy. When you go to an FCS school, it's like getting a 4th, 5th round receiver. You're getting a discount, and you're hoping that you can, take a little risk and get a little reward out of the situation versus unloading on somebody. Now, listen, I think we unloaded on Mateer, and I think we had to. We talked about it yesterday.
You don't have a choice. You don't have a choice, yeah. You had to. I'm curious what that final number ended up, because a guy like that, who's the number 1 quarterback in the portal, who also is getting attention from the University of Miami. I know you said North Carolina came in, so I'm just curious what that number was.
Last year, Dominic Williams was our big get in the portal. And he was a good player for us. I don't think I think Mateer could have a greater impact just, for the sheer fact he's the quarterback, touches the ball as much. He was reported to receive the first ever NIL package over $1 million for Oklahoma. That was Dominic Williams. Okay, so this is Mateer, number 1 player in the portal, a must-have quarterback. Miami would have taken him. North Carolina would have taken him. A lot of schools would have taken him. If Dominic Williams was $1 million a year ago, what do you think Mateer is?
Oh, he's at least 2 to 2.5, I would say.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I mean, this is a quarterback, man. I mean, and Dominic Williams, it's not like he's good. I'm not hating.
Yeah, no, I'm just using him as an example.
Boy, you know what I mean? But if we're comparing that,
you
know.
Well, I mean, remember we talked about
demanded $1 million a year ago.
I think they're going to have to put a cap on it or something. They got to do something with the portal. It's not that I don't want Mateer making the money. Listen, I'm glad we paid him. We just need some guardrails. You know what? The other thing I was thinking about with the transfer portal, and then we're going to jump into Clemson and Texas real quick when it comes to transfer portal. I think the number 1 thing I don't like about the transfer portal is, and this is not because we have to play Nick Anderson and Bauer Sharp or Jackson Arnold, but I just don't love in-conference transfers.
Yeah.
I think that one thing that would really curb the transfer portal and the tampering issue would be to say, if you transfer in conference, you have to sit out a year.
Yeah, but they can't. They won't do that, man.
They can't roll that back?
No, you can't.
They can't roll it back?
Man. No, especially coaches are leaving, going to schools in the same conference.
Well, maybe that should be the rule too.
Yeah, the same.
Maybe that should be the rule too. I just the in-conference transferring is just driving me nuts.
Especially to me, I don't like transfers between rivals. That's what I don't like. Even more than that.
No, Brendan Thompson coming to Oklahoma was weird.
Yeah,
it was weird.
Yeah.
And I didn't.
Or like you've seen players transfer from, Florida to Georgia, Georgia to Florida, Ohio State to Michigan. It's like, man.
It's so. Anyway,
Yeah, but real quick, what I hate
yeah,
about the
go ahead.
portal more than anything is the timing of it. Why are we dealing with this stuff? I think Sark is having to deal with portal transfers while planning for a playoff game. Can we just do it all after the season?
Yeah, I don't understand it
Yeah,
because even if you made the portal January 1 or following the semifinal games or whatever set of games you wanted to follow, so maybe it's just 2 teams that have to deal with the portal,
yeah,
right? Not 12. Um, but it's not like they don't have time to register for classes.
correct. But that's why, because it's all kind of based on the academic calendar. So we got to find a way to figure it out because
Yeah,
it's a lot going
there's a
on. And
lot. There's a
players,
lot of issues. There's a lot of things
yeah,
that need to be figured
and
out.
players are leaving playoff teams because they barely want to get settled at their new school for the semester.
Dude, you remember it last year? Malik Murphy, your
Correct.
backup quarterback who could have legitimately had to play.
Yes, it's Quinn Ewers.
And
He gets hurt. So yeah,
yes,
yeah, it would have been.
and you
I
couldn't
mean, we
even.
would have had ours, but yeah,
Hey,
I
has he
mean,
has
Malik
he
was the
landed?
back quarter.
Has he landed anywhere since putting his
You
name in the
know
portal from
what?
Duke?
I don't think so. I know he's visited a few places.
Listen, he would have been a good get. Maybe y'all should go back and get him again to back up Arch.
I don't think he wants to be a backup.
Yeah, probably not. All right, Kevin. I know you
I
can
heard
talk
he was
about John.
visiting Kentucky, and he might be visiting Oregon State. That's kind of weird, man. We'll see what happens there. Hopefully, he
I
doesn't
know you
regret
can.
leaving Duke because Duke has already replaced him with the Tulane quarterback, Mensa.
Yeah. Listen, I think Mateer was the cream of the crop, though. I
Oh
really
yeah,
do.
no, without a doubt. Yeah, I don't think it was even close.
But
I don't think anybody was arguing that.
Mensah and Murphy are good players, though. Like whoever,
Oh
I mean,
yeah,
Mensah,
yeah,
Mensah at Duke, and then whoever can get Murphy. I mean, as much as he is a Texas guy, I liked his game. Big,
yeah.
strong kid, big arm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right.
He had a good
I know
season at Duke too.
you could talk about John Mateer and Jeremiah Fears all day, Kevin, and I appreciate that. But unfortunately for the Oklahoma fan, they get to listen to the Texas breakdown. Fortunately for Texas fan, you get to listen to the Texas breakdown. Texas plays Clemson. 3 o'clock Saturday, DKR, named after a Sooner, on TNT with Dave Pasch on the call and Dusty Dvorak, another Sooner, on the color commentary. The weather, which will be a factor in the other playoff games, will not be a factor in Austin. Sunny, high of 64, no precipitation.
The way it should be.
Texas is it's Texas. Texas is a 12. Well, still people will still be bundled up. You know they will.
Probably, yeah, you know how it is. Yeah.
People will still be bundled up. 12-point favorite for Texas. The over/under is 52. Kevin, I'll start with you. I'll start with this. First thoughts when you heard this matchup, and has anything changed since the bracket was released?
I thought it was an interesting matchup. Clemson, given their experience, I think when you think about Clemson, you think of their experience, right? It's their 7th appearance in the college football playoff, so good for them. They've got a coaching staff that knows how to handle these moments, and they've been very successful with 2 national championships. However, when you really dig deep, like all the teams in the playoffs, they certainly have their flaws, and I do think that Texas has an opportunity to exploit some of their flaws. So it's a fun matchup, but I think Texas has a really good chance here.
All right, let's talk about the potential flaws. I don't think they're on the offensive side of the ball like we initially thought about Clemson. So when it comes to a common opponent, the only common opponent on your schedule was Georgia. They got rocked by Georgia week 1. It was hard not to remember that game, 34-3. We had buried Cade Klubnik. We had buried Dabo Swinney. We said this is the end of the era for Clemson. They don't use the transfer portal. They don't like NIL. It could be over, especially when you consider Florida State, Miami, SMU, all in that conference, moving in the right direction. Since then, though, offensively, they've looked a heck of a lot better under Garrett Riley calling plays. Cade Klubnik on the year, 63.7% completion percentage, 3,300 yards, 33 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and 6 rushing touchdowns. Kevin, when I compare that to the Texas quarterbacks, it's basically a wash, okay? Except for the interception numbers. So you take Quinn and Arch, and you're at 66 and 67%, a little bit better completion percentage. But take the yards, if you add the two together, and we're going off. I'm doing that because Quinn got hurt for a couple games. Okay,
Sure.
I add the two together, it's like 2,700 or 3,700 yards versus 3,300 yards, a little more yardage. 34 touchdowns versus 33 touchdowns. But the big number is the interceptions, 11 combined interceptions versus only 5 interceptions. Saying to me that if Clemson is going to make a game out of this, it might be because Quinn makes a mistake. Is that the same concern that you share? Because I don't see
absolutely.
Klubnik. I don't see Klubnik, unless y'all can get to him, having the same propensity to throw picks like Quinn does.
Yeah, he does not really turn the ball over, which has been his greatest strength this year, that and his athleticism. But yeah, that is a concern. The biggest concern for me is giving them a turnover, especially in our own end, right, where they have to have a short field. We saw this in the Georgia game in Austin, right? We're having fumbles, we're having interceptions, and it's setting up. That's the only time they were able to score, John, is when they had a short field. They had one long drive in the third quarter. But other than that, all their points came on our turnovers, giving them a short field, and they were able to score. So if we can protect the football, I really like our chances. Also like our chances to run the ball against them.
Well, you were turnover prone against A&M. I mean, that was the only thing that kept A&M even in that game.
Yeah, that should have been a 4-score win.
It should have been a 4-score win and probably a shutout. I mean, really, they were doing nothing offensively.
They weren't going to score a point.
But there was a number of, was it a pick six? Is that right? Is that what they scored?
It was.
Yeah.
That's the only points they scored.
Okay, so and then now let's look at the running game and let's kind of compare running games. I was surprised by this, okay, because I think of y'all as having a pretty good run game. Trey Wisner, 176 carries, 883 yards, 4.9 yards a carry, only 3 touchdowns. When I saw that number, that just kind of shook me for a minute. I said, well, surely they're running the ball a little bit better. Now, Jaden Blue has 6 touchdowns, but only on 112 carries, only 564 yards and 5 yards a carry. So combined, that's about 1,200 yards, okay? If we look at the running game for Clemson, they got Phil Maffa, 214 carries, 1,106 yards, 5.2 yards carry, 8 touchdowns. And then there's second string guy, Jay Haynes, significantly less carries, but 6.9 yards a carry and 3 touchdowns. So we got 11 versus 9 touchdowns, and we've got about 1,400 yards versus 1,200 yards. Are you surprised to hear that Clemson has a better running game than Texas?
Not exactly. They've had a pretty dynamic offense this year, and with their offense, they spread you out, which kind of gives a lot of space for the running game. So no, I'm not shocked by it, especially kind of what we've had to do at running back given the injuries we had in the offseason. So, but I do think that this game does give us an opportunity to run the football. We weren't running it against Georgia. We haven't been able to run it against them in both games, but we were able to run it effectively against A&M, and I do think we'll be able to run the football against Clemson.
All right. On the receiving side, again, just a little tidbit of stats that are putting a little doubt in my head about Texas's ability just to roll, like a lot of people think is going to happen. So y'all have got a very good core of receivers, right? I don't think they ended up being as dynamic as last year. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Which was a concern going into this year, but they've been very good. Matthew Golden, Gunnar Helm, Isaiah Bond, Ryan Wingo. Pretty good. Your leading receiver is Golden, 47 catches, 738 yards, 8 touchdowns. Their leading receiver has 24 more catches, 71 receptions, 838 yards, 11.8 yards a catch, and 10 touchdowns. Their next guy, Bryant Westco, 38 receptions for 678 yards, 17.8 yards a carry, and 5 touchdowns. And then they've got a tight end that has 7 touchdowns. Again, just looking at those in a bubble, I think you've got to give the receiving edge to Clemson.
Yeah, they've got some good guys out there. And again, let's not forget, it's not like they don't recruit well. They have a lot of talent. Antonio Williams could have gone anywhere. Brian Wesco could have gone anywhere in the country, right? I mean, I remember you guys recruiting him. He's a Texas kid. 38 catches, 678 yards, and 5 touchdowns as a freshman. So yeah, they've got talent here. I don't think anybody is denying that. The thing about them, though, I think they really struggle defensively. I think you can just really get after them defensively.
So here's the numbers defensively. That's a good segue. Here's the numbers defensively. Texas is killing it defensively. You're killing it. Okay, it's the best defense y'all had
in a long time. No, long time.
I think it's probably better than 09 and 08.
I would say 09 is the only one that compares to me. 08 was good, but 09 was really good. So this is more like 09. But I think this one's better, if I'm being honest.
12.5 points per game is what you're allowing. I mean, that's less than 2 touchdowns and 249 yards. Now, part of that is you had to play Oklahoma. Part of that is you had to play Kentucky. Part of that is you had to play Florida without Lagway. Part of that is you had to play Mississippi State without their starting quarterback. So I think there's a potential that a little bit of that's skewed. But over a 12-game season, or really a 13-game season, the averages are what the averages are. And the averages indicate you're a very stout defense.
Correct. Yeah, and I think that's what excites me the most about this matchup is being able to get after them. And look, they have a really good offense with Garrett Riley, but their offense can be inconsistent. They can have lulls, and you can get after them. Their offensive line has not been great for them this year when it comes to pass protection. Klubnik has been under duress a lot of the season, and I really think we can get after him with our line and with the occasional. We don't blitz a lot because we don't have to, but I think we'll have some well-timed blitzes as well to try to get Klubnik off of his game a little bit. And hopefully we can force him into some uncharacteristic turnovers.
Clemson allowing 10 more points a game at 22.3 points per game and 140 more yards a game, 384 yards per game allowed. So that's to your point about their defense being just a little vulnerable. I think the question is, though, Kevin, can Quinn take advantage of it? This is a big game for Quinn Ewers. From a
it's
legacy
the biggest game of his career. Correct. It's a legacy game. 100%.
If you think about the 2 OU games, and he's 2-1 against Oklahoma, and you can't take that away. All right, Oklahoma fan can't sit here and take that away from him. He is 2-1 against Oklahoma. For the rest of his life, he'll be 2-1 against Oklahoma. However, you look at the 2 wins he had; they were against awful Oklahoma teams, right? I mean, I think you have to agree with that. So I think you got to take those wins out of the way. Now, Alabama, to this point, probably his best win.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But there's been opportunities missed over his career. Washington last year, his entire, true or redshirt freshman season or whatever that was, 22. Yeah, 22. I think he had some missed opportunities. I don't know, man. I think this is a legacy building game. And I think if you look at it with Quinn and he doesn't pull through with this defense, the Texas fan base is going to say, what happens if we started Arch? Right? I think it's inevitable.
For sure. Yeah. And I do think, speaking of Arch, some people are saying he should start. I don't think he should start at all. But I do think he should play. I think at this point in the season, there's too much on the line to leave anything off the table. And that red zone package that they ran for him against Texas A&M was obviously very effective. And you didn't see it at all against Georgia. That's a big reason we lost the game, is our inability to score once we got down into the red zone. We moved the ball up and down the field for the majority of the game. All of our drives stalled. We had a chance to win the game in the fourth quarter, stalled in the red zone, got to overtime, couldn't get in the end zone. If having him out there, even if it just opens up the running game, he should be in there in the red zone. Now's
Okay.
not the time for hurt feelings or egos when it comes to Quinn Ewers. We got to do whatever we have to do to win the football game and go on to the next round.
Sark, you love him as an offensive coordinator. And I think at this point, you love him as a head coach, 2 playoffs in a row. I don't think you would trade him right now for anybody. But red zone has been an issue. What is it about his offense and or play calling that makes the red zone such an issue? Because it's been an issue now for a couple of years. It's not, this
it
is not
has.
brand
It
new.
was last year. And then, it was interesting because at the beginning of the season, it seemed we thought we had it figured out. But as the season has gone on, the inability to punch it in, I don't know. I don't understand why we've got a pretty good offensive line, some physical guys in there, why we can't just punch it in from in there, and what it is about his play calling. Why don't we just use the tight end, throw it up the seam? I'm not sure, man, but it's something that they have to figure out, because those kind of things can prevent you from winning a national championship, which we have a legit opportunity to do this year. And if you unlock something, like, who cares if it's gimmicky? You're trying to win football games here. So bringing in your backup quarterback who's 6'4", 225,
I don't see how
and
that's
an
gimmicky,
athlete.
though.
Yeah.
That's not gimmicky.
Sometimes.
What Oklahoma did against Missouri is gimmicky, right? Throwing throwback
Yeah.
passes and stuff, which again, you're trying to win the game. I mean,
You're trying to win a football game.
If it puts points on the board, what are we talking about? However, bringing Arch in the red zone is not gimmicky, Kevin. That's the right thing to do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you saw it against A&M.
And we
You
need
did
to see
see
him
it
throw
against
out of it,
Georgia.
too.
What's that?
Yeah, he came in for one play, and they did the direct snap to the running back. He got up under center. The center snapped it through Arch's legs to the running back, who was able to get the first down. Really didn't see much of Arch after that. But I want to see him come in and handle the football in those situations. I think he's proven. And it just unlocks everything. You can obviously run him. He can hand it to the running back. And of course, which we haven't seen yet, he can throw out of it, which we need to see this. And we need to see it on Saturday. Because, again, you can't keep anything in the tank in a playoff game.
Kevin, there's an adage when picking these games, especially in college. Hold on just a second. There's an adage in picking these games where the question is, or the comparison point is, which team has the better coach? Which team has the better quarterback? Okay. I think it's possible that the quarterbacks are a wash. Maybe a slight edge to Klubnik, but probably a wash. Are you willing to say Sark is a better coach than Dabo at this point?
No, I'm not. I mean, the guy's won 2 natties, and he's been in the playoffs 7 times.
He's been in the playoffs 7 times.
Yes. Isn't that crazy?
I was not aware of that. That's insane.
Yeah. Now, and also, they're starting to take transfers now in the portal. So I think he's finally coming around. He must have been told, like, hey, man, we're about to fall off here if we don't do this.
Listen, dude, I think Clemson is not the team. This is why the first round bye. This is what I was telling you about. This is why the first round bye was so important. I don't think Clemson's the team you want to play right out of the gate, man. This is not a coach that isn't aware of how to prepare for these kind of games.
Yeah.
And I think it puts you at risk. Okay, so let's get to it. It's a 12-point game. We're going to pick all the games, but let's start with Texas. Texas is a 12-point favorite. And well, you know what? Let me just double check, because that was last night when I put that together. Let me just double check.
And remember, this spread started at 10.5. It's up to 12. I'm not sure why it is, but it is.
It's still 12. Still 12. All right, I'm gonna let you pick. This is your team. You get the first pick.
Okay, I do think this is a close game. It's a tough game, I think, but I think Texas will be able to run the football and control the clock, control the line of scrimmage on both sides, and that's really where games are won. Despite the quarterbacks, despite Clemson having multiple threats, these games are won in the trenches, and I think Texas does have an advantage there. So I do think it's a close game, but Texas does win, and I think they do cover late.
You think they cover the 12?
I do. Now I think it's like 27-14, something like that.
I think Texas wins. I think Texas wins because they're at home. I think Texas wins because of their defense. I do not think they have enough offensive power to cover the 12.
I understand that completely. Yeah, I mean, I don't feel 100% great about the covering.
I could see 24-14, but that's a
Okay.
10-point game. But that's a 10-point game. You know?
Man, I'll take it. I will
No.
absolutely
Listen,
take
I know you will.
Yeah.
I know you will. You'll take a 1-point win. You'll take a 1-point win on a trick play that bounced off somebody's head. Like, I get it. Because it's the playoffs, right? We're just winning this thing. This is not a non-conference game in August anymore or early September, right? This is real-time football. So, but I just think Clemson will have a game plan to keep it close. I think if you're Texas, you got to worry about that going late in the fourth quarter. If it stays too close, I do think Texas is good enough to win the game. Clemson will cover. Kevin.
Okay, real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're talking about college football playoff appearances. Alabama, number 1 with 8. And then Clemson right behind them with 7.
Jeez.
I mean, they made it 6 years in a row. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. And then 24 this year. Ohio State has 6. Georgia and your Oklahoma Sooners both have 4. Michigan, Notre Dame with 3.
This is their least impressive team of all those teams you mentioned. Nobody would have put them in there with 3 losses.
No.
Lost at Georgia, lost at Louisville, lost at South Carolina. But dude, I think it's an awkward spot for Texas. I think that they should be the better team. I think that they are the better team. But man, we're getting.
But sometimes that doesn't matter. I mean, I'm adamant that we're a better team than Georgia. They just match up horrible with it. We match up horribly with them.
All right, let's move to South Bend, Indiana, for an interstate matchup between the surprise team of the Big Ten, the Indiana Hoosiers, and the all-time blue blood, which is Notre Dame.
I think they're the surprise team of the entire country.
I don't argue with that. I wouldn't argue with that at all. Notre Dame 7.5-point favorite. Over under is 52.5. Low temperatures on 7. This game's on Friday night, by the way. Friday night, 7 p.m. The low temperatures 21 degrees. Wind chill in the teens. 30% chance of scattered snow. However, it is Indiana and it is Notre Dame. Neither team should be surprised by this. Both will be able to train in it.
Okay, real quick.
But do the weather conditions impact Indiana's offense, though? They have to.
Yes,
right?
they have to. Here's the thing. I know they live in Indiana, but we're not playing football in Indiana this time of year. It's December 21st when this game, or excuse me, December 20th. Usually the last game is the end of November. The weather's a lot different then. We're literally in winter, going into winter. So yeah,
it is winter.
It's a lot
it is
different.
Technically winter. It is the winter solstice on December 20th. Okay, the winter solstice. This game's at 7 p.m. It will have been dark for 3 hours by the time they play this game.
It's going to be freezing. And this is not typical of what we see there. It's not the NFL, right? In Minnesota or Green Bay. College is not used to this. So it becomes a huge part of it that we have not seen before.
Oh, I think it's huge. Here's the problem. Here's the problem, though. Notre Dame has wins against 4 ranked teams. Now, I think you can argue the validity of these ranked teams. I think all of these ranked teams have warts. That being said, they are ranked teams. A&M, Louisville, Navy, and Army. Okay? Their one loss to Northern Illinois, really, really bad loss. Seems like everybody's written that loss off as a fluke, fine, whatever. Indiana, The only ranked team I think they played was Ohio State, and they lost to Ohio State. They have 0 ranked wins. Is Indiana? Everybody has a chance at this point, but Notre Dame just feels really well positioned to go ahead and take care of business against Indiana, right?
Yeah, they do. I mean, it's really going to come down to can Indiana hang in the trenches with them, right? We know from a skill position they've got an explosive offense. They got guys who can make plays, but can they hang in the trenches on both sides of the line of scrimmage against Notre Dame? The talent disparity is there. We saw it against Ohio State. Can they hang there? And Indiana's actually pretty good defensively. They're much better than you would think. When you think of Indiana, I know I'm guilty of this. I think of a kind of an old school Big 12 team.
Yeah, an air raid.
One of those. Yeah. A team that's winning games 41-38. But again,
you think of Texas Tech.
Great.
You're thinking of Texas Tech. Yeah, because that's
Texas
what
Tech.
Yeah.
For sure. But, they average 43 points a game, and they only allow 14.67. Yeah, even though the schedule's been weak, I mean, it's still impressive. So I'm curious to see how their defense plays against Notre Dame's running game. I really want to see how that goes, and if they can how effectively they can move the ball against Notre Dame's defense.
The problem with Notre Dame's running game is it's a double attack with their quarterback and their running back. Riley Leonard is a very effective runner. 720 yards rushing, 14 touchdowns, combined with Jeremiah Love, who's got 949 yards on the season and 15 touchdowns. So Notre Dame clearly the better running team. And what's Notre Dame? Do you have Notre Dame's defensive stats in front of you?
I do. Hold on one second.
I mean, I think the point is when you look at lows in the 20s and wind chills in the teens and 30% chance of snow, you have to fall back on who has a better running game and who has a better defense, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know that I can escape the fact that Notre Dame has a better running game. And I think what you're about to tell me is that they have maybe a better defense, or is Indiana's numbers looking pretty comparable?
Indiana's defense is looking pretty comparable. I'm pulling up the rankings here. 1 second.
That's fine.
Defensively, because you think about a team that's coached by Marcus Freeman, they've got a good secondary. That's where they're at their best at the ability to force turnovers. I think we saw that in their game against USC with the 2 pick sixes late in the game when USC was chasing it. We saw what they did earlier this season against Texas A&M down there in Kyle Field as well.
While you're looking that up, Curtis Rourke, quarterback for Indiana, 2,800 yards passing, 27 touchdowns, only against 4 interceptions. So you talk about an opportunistic defense against what looks like a pretty stingy quarterback in terms of turning the ball over. He doesn't turn the ball over that much.
Yeah.
The problem's going to be, do the conditions affect that? Like if it's windy at all and it's cold, I don't know. Are we putting too much on the weather? Am I being a golfer here? So when I'm a golfer and I go play in the windy weather, sometimes I give the weather too much credit. I give the wind too much borrow. Are we going to be guilty of that on Sunday when we look back at this game and say, man, the weather didn't really matter. Indiana was able to move the ball up and down.
I don't know, man. I mean, if it's windy like that and if they like to throw the ball a lot, it's going to be so cold. I think it has to play some sort of factor in the game. Real quick, okay, we're talking yards per game defensively. Indiana is second in the country.
Wow.
Ohio State is 1, Indiana 2, and Texas is 3rd. 244 yards allowed offensively for Indiana.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, Notre Dame. Yeah, and Notre Dame is not far behind them. They're in the top 10. 8th in yards allowed per game. Notre Dame is.
Now they have had a tougher schedule, so some of that starts to work itself out a little bit. But I know what we said against Texas. After 12 games, you are what you are.
Correct.
Yeah. What is
14.7 points a game?
Indiana's best win is Michigan, though. I mean, is that really their best win?
Yeah. Let me pull up here's the schedule. We'll go through it real quick. Yeah, FIU, WIU. I don't even know what that is. Western Illinois, maybe, or Western
Yeah.
Indiana. At UCLA, Charlotte, Maryland, at Northwestern. They blew out Nebraska. Remember that? That was a
Yes,
eye
that could be
opener
their
there.
best win, right? That could
Yeah,
be their
because we
best
thought
win.
Nebraska was good at that point. They also beat Washington by 14. They won at Michigan State 47-10. The Michigan game 20-15 win, and then the loss 38-15 at Ohio State. And then they beat Purdue 66-0. Purdue's so bad, man.
Purdue should get relegated. Purdue should be relegated out of
They
the Power
really
4.
should. Yeah.
There should be relegation, and they should be relegated out of the Power 4. You should let Washington State in or whatever.
You see, Odom, Barry Odom taking the job there at Purdue.
Oh, really?
Coach job, yeah, leaving UNLV, which he did a really good job at. And Dan Mullen is going to be the coach at UNLV.
Did UNLV win last night? They play Cal.
Yeah,
I don't know. I was watching the basketball game.
All right. Bowl games, man.
All right, Kevin, let's not beat this game to death. It's Indiana at Notre Dame, 7.5 point spread. I will go first. I think that Notre Dame wins and covers.
I do too. I do think it's a close game. I think Indiana will play well and do some things, but man, being at home, crowd noise, the ability to run the football and control the clock and control the line of scrimmage. But, like you kind of mentioned with Texas, if Leonard throws a couple picks, then it can get really interesting. Really interesting. And the pressure will get on Notre Dame. But I still picked him to win and cover as well.
Listen, when Brian Kelly was the coach of Notre Dame, I hated Notre Dame. And even going back before Brian Kelly, I probably wasn't a very big fan of Notre Dame. I think we all think Notre Dame gets a little too much love, a little too much hype, that their past is greater than their present, all of the things that go with Notre Dame. When they've made it into the playoffs, heck, when they made it in the BCS, it hasn't been good for them.
It has not.
But man, I like Marcus Freeman so much more than Brian Kelly. It's not even close. I can't stand Brian Kelly, and Marcus Freeman to me just says all and does all the right things. I like what that guy's about. I think I'm rooting for Notre Dame. And if Notre Dame plays Georgia, right?
Correct. Whatever. When this game plays Georgia,
it's a no-brainer that I'm pulling for Notre Dame.
Correct. It's interesting. They gave him a contract extension, and if you kind of do some thinking, you can understand why. Because if Ohio State loses,
100%.
Right, and they fire Ryan Day, who do you think their first call is going to be to?
It should be. Shouldn't even be close.
Correct. Yes. And he played there? I mean, come on. It seems like it'll be a great fit.
I just, even in the modern era of college football, I think if you're the coach at Notre Dame, man, you stick with it. I don't know.
Maybe,
I just think
Ohio State's a better job, though, man. No, it's a more pressure job. Yes.
I was about to say, is it? You lose 3 games, maybe 4 games, and you could get fired. And I think rightfully so. I think if he does lose, we're going to talk about that game last because it's the last game. If he loses to Tennessee, I think he should be fired. Like, win a big game. But we're talking 4 or 5 losses in 5 years.
And the problem is, though, it's the recruiting. You still have recruiting limitations at Notre Dame. And I mean, geographically, it's not in a great spot, but it's the academic stuff. They don't give breaks to athletes.
Yeah, but that's always been the ban. That's always been the ban against Notre Dame. He's 11-1. He's playing in the college football playoff. And he's got and arguably he's got better kids that are maybe potentially less likely to transfer because they're at Notre Dame. I'm just saying, maybe.
Okay,
maybe that's wrong.
That's a good point. That's a fair point.
Maybe that's wrong. But
I don't know if you can't get Jeremiah Smith at Notre Dame. That's all I'm saying.
Apparently you don't need him to get the fifth.
That's true. That's true. But when you look at that and the fact that, first of all, he's an alum, he loves that place. Because how do you not love Ohio State if you go to Ohio State, right? I just don't see how he could pass that up. Now, obviously, he could still go with the contract extension, but I'm sure his new contract made the buyout very expensive if he were to.
No, Ohio State doesn't care about that.
They don't care, but they're going to make it as hard for them as possible to poach their coach. Either way, I'm with you. I'm a big fan of Marcus Freeman. He's done a great job, and I think they win.
If he goes to Ohio State, screw Marcus Freeman. All right, but right now at Notre Dame, I'm on team Marcus Freeman. How about that?
I think their position. I'm with you there. But I think they're in position to make a run here if they can handle business today.
They could beat
Texas is
Georgia.
not a good matchup. Yeah, it was not a great matchup with Georgia, but they're beatable. Texas should have won that game, especially in Atlanta. So yeah, Georgia's beatable. So there's a path there for them.
The argument could be made that if Texas can get past Clemson, they have an easier run than if they would have taken the Georgia spot. Because I think
Completely
playing
agree.
Arizona State versus potentially Notre Dame is an easier matchup. We'll see.
Absolutely.
Scatterbo's pretty good. Scatterbo's pretty
He
good.
is. He is. And they've got weapons, but I would take my chances against the Sun Devils than Notre Dame.
100%. All right, SMU versus Penn State. Southern Methodist. My pick to win the ACC. They actually didn't win the
good job
ACC.
there.
They didn't win the ACC, but they snuck in to the
They got to
playoff.
the playoff. Yeah.
I think that their Kevin Jennings has been a dynamic quarterback. 3,000 yards, 66% completion of 379 yards rushing, 22 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 5 rushing touchdowns. Listen, dude, SMU's a good team. Now they're playing Penn State. It'll be a whiteout. It'll be Saturday morning. Penn State loves Saturday morning kickoffs. They've got to be as miserable with Saturday. I guess it's noon for them. Noon kickoffs as Oklahoma was with 11 a.m. kickoffs back in the day. Like, can they not get a night game? Maybe they don't deserve one. High of 26, small chance of snow, but it will be cold.
Horrible weather. I mean, it
will be cold.
Horrible.
At 11 a.m., trying to wake up and warm up. I think the question is, Drew Aller, good quarterback, 2,800 yards, 21 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. I think he falls very easily in line with the Quinn Ewers and Cade Klubnik. Good college quarterbacks, right? Good college quarterbacks. The question is, can James Franklin win a big game? Because this is a big game, and I don't trust James Franklin. I think you know who I'm going to pick because I've been down on Penn State all year. Can James Franklin beat SMU?
He can, but I think the biggest thing he has going for them is the weather conditions. You got a bunch of kids who are used to playing in, 80-degree weather, and you put them in 26 degrees. I feel bad for those kids having to do that, man. It sucks. It really sucks.
They should have beat Clemson, though, right? Like, it's their own fault.
Agreed. Yeah, beat Clemson and,
beat Clemson, they got to buy.
You playing in Austin. Yeah, exactly. Or you're playing in Austin. I don't know. Do you think they would have got the bye?
Yeah, they would have got the bye. They were 11-1. They've been
11-1
conference. They've been a 12-1 conference champion.
Yeah,
they'd have gotten the bye over Arizona State.
That's true. Yeah.
So they would have gotten the bye. Arizona State would have been, well, maybe playing in this game. I don't know. Can you imagine that if you're Arizona State and had to play a cold weather game? Holy crap.
My goodness.
Anyway, listen, dude, SMU's really good. Their running back, 1,270 yards, 14 touchdowns versus Penn State's running back, which only has 838 yards and 7 touchdowns. So double the rushing touchdowns by their top 2 backs.
But man, they've got a two-headed monster though. They've got 2 guys with, over 800 yards. Penn State does.
Okay. Maybe.
So they've got 838 for Singleton, 822 for Katron Allen.
Yes, but their wide receiver has 88 receptions, 1,062 yards, 6 touchdowns. Might be the best statistical receiver that we'll look at today.
Here's what's even crazier about that.
Right?
He's a tight end, John. That's what's crazy.
Is he really? Okay.
Yes, Tyler Warner's a tight end, 6'6".
I mean, think about that though, right? Of all the teams, we're going to look at 8 teams today. And I think I'm even including like Tennessee, right? If I look at Tennessee,
no way Tennessee, someone has that kind of
nobody has 1,000 yards receiving between these 8 teams. Yeah. Nobody. And that's coming out of Penn State, having receiving now. But now that you mentioned me being a tight end, maybe that's an advantage for Penn State in the cold weather to get the ball to the big kid.
Dude, he's 6'6", 260.
I don't know, dude. I think this game is fascinating. Listen, Penn State, their losses are not bad. Okay, all playoff teams, Oregon and Ohio State. Ohio State was a closer game if I'm recalling, than the Oregon game. I think Oregon handled them pretty good. For SMU,
Well, it was a
their
one-score
loss.
game when they had it was a one-score game. They're down 8 and they had the football.
Oh, because their loss was in the Big
Ten
Big Ten
championship game.
Championship.
Correct.
I still think
Yeah,
it's
so they
weird
went
they
11
for
and
two.
1 during
Still
the
weird that
season.
he went for two. Still weird that he
I
went
thought
for two
so
to make
too.
it
The analytics are
38-30.
weird on those things. The analytics are weird.
SMU, their losses are to BYU, which at the time was a pretty good team. And I think they were playing a different quarterback, right? Weren't they playing the
Preston Stone, I think.
Preston
might
Stone
have been in
kid?
there, yeah. Uh-huh.
They made a good run after that, beat some pretty decent ACC teams. Nothing crazy, but some decent ACC teams. And had the loss to Clemson in the SEC or the ACC championship game, where they too came back and made it a game. They were getting beat 31-17 going in the fourth quarter, lost 34-31. If they don't give up a really good return to Clemson, that game probably goes into overtime. They did. They lost.
Anything happened. They were really good in that fourth quarter.
Look, dude,
they were really good in that fourth quarter.
Penn State's an 8.5-point favorite. I'm telling you right now, SMU covers that, and I think SMU wins. If I'm putting the money line on, I'm putting the money line on SMU to win.
Yeah, I would. First of all, I would love to see that because I really like what Rhett Lashley has done.
What, you don't believe
there this year?
You like Penn State?
I don't think so. Just because it's at Penn State, this is a neutral site game.
What difference does that make, Kevin? When's the last time Penn State beat anybody? When's the last time Penn State beat anybody at home?
Dude, I just think it's a tough ask.
2017? Ohio State in 2017, maybe?
Yeah,
is that the last time they beat anybody good at home?
Maybe so. But man, I think with it being there, with the weather, look, I want nothing more than SMU to win that game. And you were spot on with saying how SMU would have they'd be able to adjust to the ACC, moving up to the Power Four. I give you so much credit for that.
That NIL portal money, man, dude. SMU's a loaded school.
They got that oil money. Yeah, they've had it for years. They've been waiting on this. This is perfect for them. They're like, man, we've been doing this since the 80s.
Yeah.
We had a whole payroll, a legit payroll. Yes.
Yeah.
But man, I think
Penn State to cover?
I am good. No, I'm not going to take them to cover. I'm going to take them to win, though.
All right, but you are taking SMU to cover.
Yeah, but I think Penn State wins. I think their offense just kind of showed me something in that Oregon game that I hadn't really seen. So they give you a lot to cover now, which we haven't seen from Penn State. It really caught my eye. So now SMU is underrated defensively. And man, but I don't know, man. Tyler Warren, how are you going to cover that dude at 6'6", 260? He looks like Gronk out there. You're going to love watching this kid play if you haven't seen him already. So tune in. It's going to be fun.
Who's SMU's coach? I don't even know who's SMU's
Rhett Lashley.
What a Texas name, huh? Is he from Texas?
I don't know. I would imagine so.
God bless, dude. He should be the coach on like Friday Night Lights. Let's look.
Yeah, he should be Odessa Permian or something like that.
Where's he from?
Let's see where he's from. Let me pull it up.
He's from Arkansas.
That makes sense, though. I mean, it's right there, Springdale.
It's definitely a Southern name for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. His great granddaddy was a colonel in the Civil War, Colonel Rhett Lashley.
Yeah,
listen,
he is from Springdale. Played at.
I did not even know. Now that we say it, of course, I knew that's who it was. But here's how little I care for James Franklin. That I go back to who has the better coach, who has the better quarterback. Okay, I think Rhett Lashley's a better coach than James Franklin, and I forgot the dude's name. Okay, that's how little I think of James Franklin. Number two, quarterbacks. I like Kevin Jennings over Drew Aller, dude. I think the kid's more dynamic. I think the kid is more dynamic. I think he can run the ball. I think he's a better athlete. And
he's got something about him too.
Yes, he's a gamer, bro. He's a gamer.
Yeah, the way he looked in that second half, that fourth quarter against Clemson. Yeah, and again, Texas high school football. He's out of South Oak Cliff High School.
Look,
they've got some players, man.
The weather sucks, but I think 11 a.m. is better than the 7 p.m. kick that Notre Dame has to deal with, that Indiana has to deal with at Notre Dame. I think it's going to be better than the 7 o'clock kick that Tennessee will have to deal with at Ohio State, because at nighttime it's just colder, bro. It's just colder. You know this.
Yeah.
And so I'm sticking with SMU.
High of 26. A few former Texas players on that SMU roster. Their starting center, Logan Parr. and Moochie Dixon, one of their receivers, starting receiver for them.
And they've had a good portal season, even though they're in the playoff. They picked up a couple portal players, haven't they?
Yeah, man. They've got the OG oil money, man. They've got as much as anybody.
I'm telling you, don't sleep on SMU. Don't sleep on SMU. I think you know that they're pretty good. I think you're seduced by Happy Valley. You're seduced by the myth that Penn State is a good program. I'm telling you, Kevin, it is a myth. James Franklin
I'm
is
talking about
a terrible gamer coach. He cannot coach a big game.
Yeah, he makes some weird decisions. Hey, look, I hope SMU wins.
You're going for SMU? You're rooting for SMU?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I like it. All right. Final game of this opening round. By the way, this is so awesome to be talking about these opening rounds.
Dude, how awesome is this matchup here?
This is so much better than seeing these guys in the Gator Bowl. Like, I can't even begin. I mean, I don't care, whatever. It's so good. And yes, we're talking. And what I can't believe, and I mentioned this yesterday when we were giving just a snap preview, I cannot believe Ohio State is a touchdown favorite over an SEC team. I don't care who the SEC team is. After what we saw against Michigan, I don't know how they're a touchdown. Maybe they're a favorite because they're at home, but a touchdown favorite? Kevin, listen. Saturday night, 7 p.m., ESPN, temperature in the 20s and the teens.
Miserable.
Okay. Ohio State's a 7.5-point favorite. They're both 10-2. But, dude, listen. Tennessee is the 9th best rushing team in the country. Ohio State is way down the list. I didn't even want to count them there so far down. We're talking like in the 30s. Okay? Really, right? I looked it up. And I just got bored counting the numbers. So they're like in the 30s or something. Defensively, though, Ohio State is number 1 in the country in points allowed, number 1 in yards allowed. But, dude, Tennessee's no slouch. Number 4 in points allowed and number 4 in yards allowed. And they played some pretty good teams. We know this. Tennessee played some really, really good teams.
Yeah.
Ohio State didn't do bad either against Oregon. They had Oregon, and they played Penn State. So I'm not taking that away from them. I think they're both really, really, really good defenses. But Dylan Sampson, look, dude, I know, I can't believe that I actually sound like an SEC homer right now, but I just think Tennessee's a better football team. I don't know how this spread 7 points. What am I missing?
Well, first of all, it's at the shoe. That's a big part of it.
I've been to the shoe. I've been to the shoe, Kevin. And Oklahoma beat that ass in the shoe. So don't tell me about the shoe.
You did.
Did you not see the game 2 weeks ago against Michigan?
Tennessee, no, of course.
Did you not see the game 2 weeks ago against Michigan?
When I saw the worst game plan,
meaningless to me. The shoe is meaningless to me.
When I saw the worst offensive game plan of the season by any team, by Ohio State offensively,
it looked like Seth Luttrell was calling plays for Ohio State.
Yes, they for some reason said, "Hey, look, I know we have these 3 dynamic wide receivers, but we are going to impose our will and try to go against the only thing Michigan does well. The best thing they do, and that's stopping the run. And we're going to just run it and 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 not throw it. And I don't know why. And they were stubborn and they lost the football game because of it. They can't cover all your guys. Texas lit them up throwing the football. And they were so stubborn. So I think they got a little bit of a, I don't want to say revenge factor, right? But they've got a bad taste in their mouth.
They should have some red ass. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're going to get out there and get after Tennessee. And I think they're going to try to unload all of those weapons against the Volunteers.
Why?
That's the only reason I could think. Huh?
Why? Just because they were so bad against Michigan, ergo they have to be good against Tennessee?
No, I'm not saying they have to.
Tennessee's a better defensive team than Michigan is.
They are. I think they are. Especially, I love their front. Their front is a bit more active.
You don't think they can get after Will Howard?
I do, and Will Howard.
It sounds like to me you think Ohio State's going to cover. Like that's your early pick. Let's just get it out of the way.
I don't think they're going to cover, but I think they can win the football game. I certainly think they can win the football game.
I don't know, man. Listen, dude. Josh Heupel, give him 3 weeks to dial up some offense. 2 weeks knowing he's going against Ohio State. Look, it's cold. I get that, but it's not. It's going to be miserable cold.
It's miserable. Yes, at night too. On Columbus.
On the turf. Oof. It's going to be hard.
Yeah.
It's going to be miserable cold. But listen, dude, he's got Dylan Sampson. Dylan Sampson.
What are we going to see from Nico? I love Dylan Sampson. You know,
let's
I
go
love
back
him.
to Dylan Sampson, and then we can
we
talk.
both love Dylan Sampson.
First team All SEC, right? We just talked about it yesterday.
Yeah.
He's a first team All SEC running back,
All
dude.
SEC, yes. Deservedly so.
I don't know, man.
1,485 yards rushing. Dylan Sampson.
Look, Will Howard is a fine quarterback. He falls back in line with Cade Klubnik and Drew Aller and Quinn Ewers. He's fine. And Nico,
I would take both of those guys over Will Howard.
That's what I'm saying. This is not your typical quarterback that when you say, hey, he's going to unload on all these receivers, 27 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 2,800 yards with Ohio State's receivers, the dude should be at 3,700 yards. He should have been killing it, dude. Listen, half their schedule should have been just stat padding for Will Howard, and it wasn't. That's what makes me nervous. This is a real football team, bro. This is a real football team. They're not. I know I've said bro a lot this episode. I don't even know why. I don't know if it's college football playoff has me excited or Jeremiah Fears knocking down threes. So whatever. Anyway, all that to be said, this is not Michigan. This is a better team than Michigan, and they got curb stomped by Michigan defensively.
They did. What are we going to see from Nico? Iamaleava.
That's the problem. I agree. That is the Achilles heel to Tennessee.
He's 65% completion percentage, which is good.
Fine.
2,500 yards, 19 touchdowns,
5
only 5 interceptions. He's put the ball on the ground a few times, so you guys got after him. And Ohio State say what you will about Ohio State, their defense has been good all year. It's been really good.
The problem with Nico is not so much the turnovers as it can get very ineffective.
Their offense,
yes, they can go very stagnant. They can be we talked about this. They can be explosive one drive where you're like, that's the best offense in the country, and then they go 3 and out 3 times in a row, and you're like, what? Which is it? Like, I don't understand what's happening. And is that Nico? Is that Heupel's system? Who's to say? I mean, if you're an Oklahoma fan from 2014, I think you'll go on that's Heupel's system, but. Look, he's talented. I think the weather could get to Nico. He's also a redshirt freshman going against Ohio State's defense, whereas Will Howard is a senior or some upperclassman. So I do think that there is the potential for that. I just like the running game and the defense by Tennessee. I really do. I just think it's enough. I think it's enough to kind of keep Ohio State on the edge. I definitely think they cover. I don't know that I'm willing to pick the upset like I am with SMU versus Penn State, but this is not a cakewalk for Ohio State.
No,
if they show up flat at all, they're beat.
Yeah, and it's crazy the lines here, like the margins, how close this game could have been flipped, right? This game could have been at Neyland. I'm sure Tennessee is very disappointed.
Some would argue it should be.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have a problem with that if it would have been. That's what happens when you have the 8-9, right? It's just kind of how it works out.
Well, losses to Oregon, but that's offset by Tennessee's loss to Georgia. You have a loss to Michigan, but that's offset by their loss to Arkansas. Again, very narrow margins between these two teams. Very narrow margins between these two teams. I am going to chalk it up. I like Tennessee's run game in the conditions to cover. We'll see if they win. Not going to surprise me. So I'm taking Tennessee to cover.
I'm taking Ohio State to cover. I think it's a really close.
A 7.5.
Is it 7.5 or just 7? Not that it matters, but
I have 7.5. I can double check it.
You
Hold
should
on,
be
I'll
right.
double check it.
I do. I think they pull away late. I think they pull away late. I think they just get the ball to your guys. You've got so many of them. Don't overcomplicate this. I hope Tennessee wins. I like Tennessee. I like Heupel. I like their defensive front, especially James Pierce. I want to see how he can get after Will Howard and make him uncomfortable, get him off his spot, because he seems like a guy, even though he's got some athleticism in the passing game, if he gets off his spot a little bit, it can get weird. He's not a guy that really creates out of the pocket like you think a guy his size and with his athleticism would be. So I want to see how if they handle this one better than they handled the Michigan game. They've had some time to stew on that and hopefully make some improvements for them. So I'd love to see Tennessee wins, but I think the Buckeyes get it done.
This is the game Joel Klatt is mad about because he thinks that Oregon got the rough end of the draw by having to play one of these two teams. And probably right.
I agree. Completely agree.
I think I said this earlier. I think the bigger issue is not look. You're gonna have to play somebody in the quarters, and they're gonna be good.
Yeah.
They don't have to play Texas. They don't have to play Notre Dame. Conceivably, everybody thinks Penn State's okay. I don't, but they don't have to play Penn State. They've already played them once anyway. I think the bigger issue is the rematch. So I think when you look at the bracket, for me, it would have made better sense to put Ohio State where Indiana is and have to go to Notre Dame and put Indiana in Ohio State's position, but make them go to Tennessee. Yeah. I think that's a more fair bracket such that if Indiana was to beat Tennessee, nobody would complain that Oregon has to play Indiana.
Yeah. Nobody at all. It's kind of a reward for being the number one seed, right? You can see that.
Right. So I agree with Joel, but for me, it's the more of the having to replay. Oregon should not have to replay a team that they barely beat.
Yeah.
This early. They should be on the opposite sides of the bracket, Oregon and Ohio State. And it's so simple. I don't understand it. You and I, we've been around brackets our whole lives as sports fans. These people have. I just don't understand how they look at that and go, oh, yeah, let's do a second round rematch against Ohio State.
Correct. No, I'm with
Nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to see that.
No. I'm going to put the bracket up real quick on the screen.
Yeah, put it up, and then we'll get out of here. But anyway,
this is such an interesting deal, right? And there'll be tweaks to this thing. The way it is now is not the way it's going to be. It's kind of a new, almost experimental type deal, right?
Yeah, I've heard calls to reseed after the first round. I don't love that.
I don't like that either.
The NFL does that, but the NFL does that to an extent. They reseed or guarantee that you're playing but I just think the easiest thing would have been switching Indiana and Ohio State, making Indiana the 9 seed, Ohio State the 7 seed. It would have been so simple.
All right, so let's just start at the top here, right? So Clemson and Texas. Texas gets the job done here. Then they go to Atlanta to take on Arizona State. Tough game, but I think a manageable one.
It's just such an easier matchup than
and that's why the 5
anything Oregon's going to have.
Correct. Yeah, and I think that's why the 5 seed was. If you're going to be in a first round game, you definitely want the 5 seed. But yeah, and then with this one here, man, this Tennessee, Ohio State against Oregon. I mean, what a matchup in the Rose Bowl too.
Let me ask you this though. Okay, when you look at the bottom 7 teams or 8 teams that are there, are we seduced by the names Tennessee and Ohio State? Or are they actually the second and third best team of the bottom 8? Because I think we all think Texas is the 5th seed.
Well, that's the thing, right? There's not much for me. There's not much separating any of these teams.
Yeah,
it just isn't. Everybody has flaws. Texas has flaws offensively. We all know that, right? Arizona State, who knows how good they really are? They got the job done in the Big 12 this year. They have a good running back. But how good is their defense, actually? Right? Tennessee, they're flawed offensively. Ohio State, their play calling and game planning has been weird all season, right? They haven't been as dynamic as we expected them to be.
Penn State's coached by James Franklin.
Correct. SMU is just new to all of this. Indiana, they're new to all this. How good are they in the trenches? How good are they really, given the fact, who they play? Notre Dame, what are we going to see out of Riley Leonard? Georgia, their offense was weird, even with Carson Beck, and they don't seem to play hard unless they're playing against Texas in the second half against Alabama. Honestly, all season, that's the only time I've seen Georgia seem like they are truly interested in playing football.
What's the Carson Beck status? Has that been updated
Carson
at
Beck
all?
is out. He's done.
For the season? For out
I
forever?
believe he is. I think he's out for the season. He has a type 2. I want to see, though. I haven't heard for sure. There's no timeline set. But I think he's done. Yeah. The thing is, though.
The thing is, their backup looked pretty good against Texas.
Yeah, he did. We'll see, though. You have time to prepare. I think a lot of teams are going to be excited to go up against him, other than Carson Beck.
I would love to see a Notre Dame Georgia matchup, and I would love to root for Notre Dame in that situation.
And it's in the Sugar Bowl, right? Obviously, Georgia's going to have a lot of fans there, but it's not like it's in Atlanta.
So you've got a rooting interest because you've got Texas. So this might be a hard question. Outside of Texas, who would you want to see win? Is that too hard of a question to answer?
Man,
I like Arizona State. Arizona State, SMU, and Notre Dame.
Yeah, nobody has a beef with Arizona State, right? Unless you're an Arizona fan.
Yeah. No.
So, yeah, Oregon. I don't hate Oregon.
But Dylan Gable's a good story. Dylan Gable's a good story.
Correct. Although, do you really want him winning that? What people are going to say? Oh, you guys said Dylan Gabriel walk and he goes to win the 90 at all.
Our dog's been kicked so much. What difference does it make?
I got you. I mean, Boise State, how good is Boise State? We know Janty is amazing.
I love it.
You slow him down.
Kevin, it's historic. Kevin, it's historic. We're on the precipice of a historic moment in college football, and I just think we have to enjoy it. And despite Oklahoma, hey, John Mateer news takes a little bit of burn off the.
For sure.
But anyway, Kevin.
Real quick before we go, one more thing. I just want to say something else about this bracket. If things go Texas's way this week and against Arizona State, you're setting up a semifinal in Dallas, potentially against Oregon.
Well, now, why does Oregon have to go play Texas in Dallas?
Again, that's why people are so upset about the seeding here. I completely agree.
That. I didn't even realize that. Where's the other one? Where's the other one at?
In Miami, in the Orange Bowl.
Well, they shouldn't have. But
nobody will really have a geographical advantage there.
Texas should have to go to Miami. They should not get the benefit of playing. And it's Mercedes Stadium for the championship if Georgia makes it.
Yeah, it's back in Atlanta.
I'm so sick of that.
Can you imagine that? Yeah.
Freaking Georgia, dude. All right, man.
You gotta beat it, man. And that's the thing. We couldn't get the job done. I don't want to play him again.
Kevin, we'll be back on Sunday, recapping this Texas game. Final thoughts on the Texas game before we go. Last word.
Well, just great opportunity. I'm happy to be playing in games that matter this late in the season after going a decade without doing this. So, but I'm nervous about the game, but I think we get the job done. But I'm very nervous.
Kevin, we'll talk Sunday. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the games. Enjoy the first ever college football playoff opening round. Have a great afternoon and a great rest of your week. Boomer!
Welcome.